The search for America's best cake decorators is on.
All right. So I'm just trimming up my cake layers right now. So I'm trying to do this technique that's called Ombre Ruffles, which is just a gradient of starting with a darker color and kind of working your way up into a lighter color and just kind of fluting each strip of fondant to create that ruffled look. This is a design that we do quite a bit. It got really trendy this past wedding season. It's just kind of carried through and popular for baby showers and stuff now, bridal showers, sort of anything. It's just a really pretty, kind of dainty design. And I'm hoping that I'll be all right and finishing on time.
Today I'm making a two-tiered cake and it's going to be blue, like an off dark blue, but it's basically kind of to resemble a dress. It's got like a balloon like pleated pattern on the bottom, and then it's got a straight top and some dragées to kind of act like beading on a dress. My main concern is definitely going to be time, and I actually don't use fondant very often here at the bakery, so I'm not as comfortable, but I felt for this cake, I definitely wanted to use it.
I'm doing a two-tier cake. It's our dark chocolate cake with chocolate ganache and chocolate mousse filling. It's inspired by my father, who just passed away recently. This style of cake that I'm doing is actually going to have words written on it, and it's popular for weddings, anniversaries, retirements, even birthdays, just to kind of commemorate the person who you're celebrating. The words I'm piping on this cake are the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, which was my dad's favorite prayer, and so this is kind of dedicated to him.
The two-tiered cake that I'm going to be making today is a round cake. It is inspired by this technique called ombre. Ombre means gradation of color. We do a lot of wedding cakes, and ombre seems to be the most popular thing right now. My one concern would probably be not making it on time, taking a lot longer than an hour.
It's actually my first time making this shape of cake, going out on a little bit of a limb, but so far so good. I mean, if you do the same thing over and over again, you definitely get bored, and this is definitely like a really creative process. I love when customers come in with something we've never done before, and I get to experiment and they get to see the finished product. That's probably the most fun part for me in all this. All the different ideas out there. I get a lot of inspiration from other cakes, other things that have been done, and then kind of trying to alter it, or even sometimes trying to do it exactly how the other person did it, just to see if I can.
I'm trying to keep in mind just time, obviously, and kind of how many ruffles I need to do to have the colors change and fade really nicely, working quickly so that they don't dry out and start to crack once I try to put them on the cake. So with the ombre on the shades, I mean, it just depends on how kind of extreme you want the look to be. This one I'm going to do 6 different colors, and that's just on 2 tiers. You could do, 10 or 12 if you wanted, but just since these ones are pretty small little tiered cake, I feel like 6 will have a nice show of color.
This is actually my first competition I'm doing, so it's making me a little nervous. I want this cake to look flawless, so what I'm trying to do right now is to seal all the crumbs into the cake, because the last thing we want are crumbs on the outside of the cake, because that's not going to look pretty. Being a perfectionist can either be helpful or it can't be, because I keep focusing on stuff that I shouldn't be. Like, I keep seeing cake crumbs everywhere. My first instinct is wanting to clean it up rather than focusing on the cake. My staff would say I'm a perfectionist. My friends would say that too. I feel like I have a lot of room to become a perfectionist, so I don't consider myself one. OCD maybe.
The trick to having a very smooth finish is having a very nice and smooth buttercream to begin with. The cake must be pretty straight and not lopsided, and your tools have to be straight as well. There is always the back of the cake, as they say in the cake decorating world. Sometimes I find that imperfections make the cake look very yummy and tasty and delicious. If it's so perfect and it looks like a display, it looks great, but then nobody wants to eat it, you know, people think it's fake. That can kind of be a bummer when you spent so much time making a cake look amazing and nobody wants to eat it. I feel like I'm right on time. I just need to put everything together and shimmer it and just make it look gorgeous. I think I will be done exactly in an hour or hopefully less.
With the Ombre Technique, the biggest thing is just to start with whatever color you want the darkest to be, and then just consistently keep adding a little bit of white to it to kind of make it a little bit lighter as you go up. This is kind of where the time-consuming part comes in, of just individually fluting each little edge. I think I'll be all right on time. I just gotta just go a little quicker on the rolling than I am used to. The hands are hurting a little bit. The balls of it are just a little sore, but I've done it before quite a bit, so you can power through.
I feel pretty good right now, but I also want to make sure I have a cushion of time, just so I have room for error. Because it always happens with cake making. Something always happens. It's never a perfect day for cakes. My cake's gonna be buttercream, not fondant. It's gonna have fondant decor, but I like to have a thick layer of buttercream because not a lot of people like to eat fondant. They always pick it off, and buttercream tastes better too.
The cracking. It's the most difficult part for me when dealing with fondant because I don't deal with it that often. I'm just not as used to how it reacts. I'm definitely struggling with this tier. The fondant was a little troublesome, but I think it'll work out. It's just a little lumpy, which I'm not a fan of.
I have fall leaves here, and I've marbled different colors and imprinted a leaf pattern on it. And I have some roses that I'm going to be airbrushing also in gold and red and orange, so it has a little bit more dimension to it. Time is of the essence.
This is how I get all my muscles. I think the most difficult aspect of this tiered cake would probably be the actually making each petal. It's not a difficult technique, but it takes a while. These are made from our fondant that we make in-house. We make everything from scratch, and it has white chocolate in it, so it actually tastes good, aside from it looking pretty.
Oh, this fondant is being not nice. I should have actually refrigerated the cake so the icing would have set, and I would have gotten a cleaner finish, but I did not. I'm gonna leave that be for now. I'll finish it. The dragées fall off little by little.
This is the most difficult part of this cake, to ice it and put ganache so that it's nice and smooth. The chocolate ganache is keeping in the good consistency that I need. It's not giving me any problems at all. It's perfect.
I think texture is super important in cakes. Now, it's definitely coming back, and that really smooth look is just becoming a little less popular. And I think texture is good. It just adds a little something different to your normal cake and just makes it stand out quite a bit more. I'm a huge fan of texture.
I feel pretty good about the time. I have about a half an hour, and believe it or not, half an hour is a lot of time to finish a cake. I thought I would have an issue with the petals sticking onto the cake, because if the cake isn't completely cooled, then it won't stick very well. But it's sticking pretty well because the buttercream's not too chilled, and so it's acting like a glue with the fondant petals.
I'm going to be using the Somerset sheeter for this little bit of fondant. Using a sheeter definitely does save a lot more time than rolling it out manually with a rolling pin. There's not much human error when you use a sheeter. I'm liking how everything's turned out right now. I feel like I'm going on schedule here.
Oh, shoot. So I just rolled out the wrong color, and I'm trying to hope that I can still use them. I don't have time to sit and re-roll them out right now, so I'm gonna just move on to the correct color that's supposed to go after the white and hope that the kind of lighter gray purple that's supposed to go after that doesn't dry out and get really cracked so that I can still work with the ones I've already done. Starting to get a little nervous now that I'm not gonna have enough time.
I think my cake, the detail will definitely be the pleating and the shape. The shape is definitely not normal as opposed to a normal two-tiered cake. It's got the round curved edges instead of just the straight up and down, so that'll definitely give it something to make it stand out. It's a technique that I haven't really tried out that much. I practiced a little the other night, but I'm just kind of a just jump in kind of person, so we'll see how it goes. The pleats took a little longer than I thought they would, but overall, with the time left, I feel pretty good about everything.
I am writing the words to a prayer, the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. The piping is a very important part of this piece. I learned to pipe when I was 12 years old, so I've been doing it for a very long time. I've been doing this for 21 years now. I grew up in a bakery, and when I was learning to decorate, my dad sat me down on a table with a large piece of parchment paper, and I just had to write over and over again, happy birthday, happy anniversary. A lot of people don't really freehand anymore. There's a lot of stencils and templates and things that people use nowadays that is great for the beginning decorator. But I grew up piping. Like, this is all we did. Growing up in the bakery, we didn't have any of those fancy tools.
For this kind of design, you can get away with sort of that more rustic feel and not have the edges super clean and perfect. It still gives it a really nice look. I kind of realized time was a little bit more of a factor. I kind of spaced out the ruffles a little bit to kind of give more coverage and kind of fill up the surface area a little bit, just to make sure that I had everything sealed up and the whole cake completely covered.
As a decorator, having the eye to be able to cover things up and even just like aesthetically placing items on things can make a huge difference when it comes to the finished product. Most of the time, people only see the front. They never really tend to look at the back. I mean, your aim is to get it all perfect all the way around, but sometimes things happen.
If I were to do this all over again, I think the one thing that I would do differently is color the buttercream to be a blue color. And so that would be, especially for the bottom tier, that way the white buttercream doesn't show through the petals. I'm most worried about the stacking part because if my hands aren't steady, then the cake can topple over and land on the table.
Just need to add another leaf, and then I'm done.
Okay, I see one imperfection. I'm happy with the way it turned out. If I had time, I would change one thing about the top tier. The bottom ribbon, the thickness of it, I would change it and make it thinner so that there would be more room for more waves of ribbon.
Now that I'm finished, I think that I probably would have wanted to incorporate some grapes on the cake just because my dad was fond of growing them. And I think that would have been a really nice touch to the cake design. But I realistically didn't have enough time to do that, so I just kind of scrapped that idea and went for what was going to allow me to finish on time.
The flower placement, as always, is the best because it covers up your mistakes. So there was a little cracking on the side and some frosting was showing through, so I decided to put the flower right there rather than the top. It totally covers it, so you can't even tell. Overall, it ended up being okay. It just wasn't my best.
All right, not too bad. You can definitely see that it's just a nice flow of color change, and I like the crisp white on the top, and I feel pretty good about the cake, actually. Obviously, you know, in an hour, you can spend, you know, that on a single tier or half of a tier, so to complete it with how many ruffles I put on it, I feel pretty good.